Welcome and thank you for joining us to the Commonwealth Club Member-Led Arts Forum. My name is Robert Milton. I'm the co-chair for Member-Led Arts Culture and the curator for Farmers Art Gallery. I'll be your host today for the Artist Talk. Today we have Philip Hua, who will be speaking about his works, All That Glitters, followed by a presentation of his bodies of works. Philip's works were originally mounted at the Commonwealth mid-March, and that was doing shelter in place. So we had to immediately shut our doors. But we take the opportunity today to show his amazing works to you via Zoom today. I'm really excited to have Philip actually show his works today because they're just amazing, amazing works. For more information about our live streaming programs, please check out our website, www.commonwealthclub.org. Once again, www.commonwealthclub.org. His works will be up until further notice. Before we talk about the artist, I'd like to give a little background about Philip. Philip is a San Francisco-based Vietnamese conceptual painter, known for using everyday objects, materials to explore the connection between the economy and the environment. Hua graduated from the Art Academy of San Francisco in 2003 with a degree in illustration, and later studied at the San Francisco Art Institute. His works combine traditional Chinese icons such as birds and trees with the technique of Chinese brush painting, digital painting, and images of nature and financial print. Using collage to explore the construct relationships between nature and commerce and the relationship between the United States and China. His works are firmly rooted in the practices of Asian contemporary art. I'd like to now actually introduce Philip Hua, who is our special guest today. I'm really excited to have him to talk about his works.
Thanks, Robert. I'm very happy to be here.
Really excited to have you, Philip. I tell you, it's long coming. You know, your works have been at the club in the dark. No one's been able to see your works. Now we have the opportunity. But before you start, I want to remind our audience that we'll be taking questions at the end of the program. So please submit your questions. We'll take them towards the end of the program. All right, great. All right, Philip. Yeah. So tell us about your works.
Yeah. I'm happy to be here. First of all, I'm a big fan of the Commonwealth Club, and it's a great honor to be able to present my works to this audience. I have a presentation ready, and I'd like to tell you about those bodies of work if now's a good time.
All right, go for it.
All right, great. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Okay.
So I'm going to take you a little bit on my artistic journey on how I got to this body of work and the inspiration and all the things that brought me to where I am today.
Right.
So if you were to ask a young Philip Hua what he wanted to be when he grew up, I would have said that I wanted to be a mailman. And not because I had any particular fondness for the postal service or for delivering mail, but so that I could catch bugs on my route.
Ah, okay.
This was something that I was really interested in because when I was a kid, I grew up with my aunts and uncles who were, at least 10 years older than me, and for their high school biology project, they had to catch bugs and pin them. And I remember as a child looking at all of their bug collections and being in awe of the beauty of nature, these really magnificent creatures that were just really interesting to the young Philip Hua. So much so that I started to catch my own bugs. I would catch the bugs and make my own net, catch the bugs and pin them. And there's a real artistry to pinning bugs. It in itself is there's a craftsmanship to it.
Uh-huh.
And as a child, I was frankly terrible. But I was interested in it. It was something that fascinated me, and so because of that, I did it a lot, and I caught a lot of bugs on my own, going out into the fields of San Jose where I grew up. Um, so when it was my turn to be in high school, I ended up having a lot of practice by then, and I ended up having lots of extra bugs when I would had to do my project because I was interested and I just, I would catch extra bugs and, one wasn't good enough, one wasn't big enough, whatever. So I had lots of extras. And so what I ended up doing was selling them to my student classmates. So I actually did a lot of that and I made lots of money off of these extra bugs. And I guess you could say it was my first foray into making art and selling art.
Interesting.
So then I had to start thinking about what I wanted to do with my life. And being a Vietnamese Asian uh, teenager, my options were doctor or lawyer, but I wasn't really interested in those. So it took me a while to figure out what I did want to do. I had taken some art classes in high school and didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So I ended up going to community college to try to figure that out. And I took more art classes there as well as general education. And when I took the art class, one of the teachers said to me, you're really good at this. You should think about doing this. And so that's what I decided to do. It really just took somebody to tell me what to do with my life. And I said, yeah, that's what I wanted to do. So I ended up enrolling in the Academy of Art college at that time, now university, majoring in illustration because I was really interested in telling visual stories. So we did
Uh-huh.
lots of figure drawing and figure painting. A lot of my work was representational. I was interested in fantasy art, in gaming. Um, and it wasn't until later on that I decided that I wanted to do something different. And so that brought me to my first body of work where I was exploring pouring paint onto canvas. I was interested in exploring color and action, the randomness of letting the paint be paint. And
Mhm.
uh, this was the body of work.
Sort of has that feel of Jackson Pollock, that action painting, look to it.
Yes. So actually, that was sort of the things that I was thinking about.
Ah,
I
yeah,
would lay the canvases
yes.
on the
There, yeah,
ground.
especially that one there. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. On the left is
Oh my,
Jackson Pollock. On the right is Helen Frankenthaler.
wonderful.
So
Yeah.
these were sort of these two art historical people that I was sort of channeling in this body of work. And I did this work for a while. And it
Uh-huh.
wasn't until I went to China for the first time in 2005 that my work changed. Going to China, I'm Vietnamese, but I'm actually a quarter Chinese as well. I was visiting my father because he was overseas working there. And it was the first time where the environment, or at least the peril of the environment, became visible, it manifested itself to me because while I was there, I was witnessing this enormous economic growth and development. China, Beijing at the time was constructing a lot of new buildings.
Uh-huh.
They were preparing for the 2008 uh, Olympics. But at the same time, with all this economic growth, there was this environmental decay. And that dichotomy of these two forces at play at the same time inspired me to change direction in my work. And I started to become more concerned with issues around the environment.
Environment.
growing up in San Jose, when before it was Silicon Valley, it was a lot of fields and orchards and hillsides. And I remember just wandering through all of that. And a lot of those places today are now replaced with development. So those issues inspired my next body of work, which I called deconstruction paintings. And with this body of work, my palette changed and my process changed. My palette became more subdued. My process became more of adding and subtracting at the same time as a representation, a metaphor for the environmental, the economic growth that I saw and the environmental decay, both at the same time. So I would draw with pencil and graphite, and then I'd erase it. I'd collage paper and cardboard, and then I'd tear it off. I would paint with iron, and then I'd let it rust. So there was this back and forth, this additive and subtractive process that I was doing that symbolized economic growth and environmental decay for me. And then they started to take, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's a question. Are these works really large, or what are the size of the works that your body's works?
I'd say medium size. A common size was 36 by 48, so 3 feet by 4 feet, 4 feet by 5 feet, that sort of scale.
All right, thank you.
So they started to take on a little bit of a landscape feel, because I was really still at the same time channeling the process of growth and decay and additive and subtractive. But then they started to become a little bit more figurative. There started to be more of abstract landscapes. And I saw these bodies of work, and I felt like they needed to get thicker and grungier and they more three-dimensional. And then I went to a show, and I saw that Anselm Kiefer was doing exactly what I wanted to do. And it crushed me. I felt like, what was the point of continuing with this body of work when somebody had already done what I wanted to do? So that sort of forced me to rethink what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go with my work. And that's when I started to work on the next body of work called Reaction. And with Reaction, I was thinking about how our interactions these days were a hybrid of digital and analog, in-person, physical, and digital, especially through texting and through social media. So I started to implement a little bit more of a digital process into my work, in addition to the painterly qualities that I was already investigating, that I was interested in. And so I moved a little bit more into representation. And so I started to think about the same concepts of the environment, but looking at them through a different prism. And this idea of the environment and our relationship to it, and what were the causes of the growth, and what could the image of decay look like? And so I started to create these images digitally, and I would print them onto these individual sections of newspaper that I would then collage back together after painting on them. So I'd print on them, and then I'd paint on them to disperse the ink. And then I'd coat them in packaging tape as a means to not only collage them together, but also as a symbolic element. And by coating each sheet in packaging tape, there was this methodical process, this repetitive process of putting something together, coating it in plastic, and that to me was sort of like manufacturing. And I started to, through the process of creating these works and piecing them together, I was sort of channeling this process of manufacturing a product. You coat something in plastic, and it can sort of take on this form of a product.
Right.
And so I started to use the image of a tree or plants as an icon, as a symbol for the environment. And I also thought there's a little twisted poetry of having a tree on paper. And so I created a bunch of these works on newspaper, specifically the Wall Street Journal, because for me, two things: the quality of newspaper is very similar to rice paper. It's thin, it's delicate, it's light, and it takes the ink very well, and it disperses the ink very well. And then also symbolically, the Wall Street Journal for me was this great representation of the environment. Of the economy. And the thing with newspaper, though, is that it starts to degrade. And the idea that I was thinking about was that we were commodifying nature. And I realized that even I too had participated in making a product out of nature, out of selling nature out in a way. So it was something that I started to think about a lot. So I created a bunch of images of trees. And the thing with newspaper is that it's not archival. And over time, it starts to degrade. It starts to yellow. And I was using this change in the work, the yellowing of the newspaper, this essentially the acids in the paper turning the paper yellow, as a metaphor, as a symbol of the environment degrading. And so that's the reason that I call it reaction. It's reacting to sunlight, it's reacting to our commodification of nature, and as a result, the works start to yellow, they start to change, they start to degrade. So after making a lot of trees, I started to think, okay, what do I do next? How else can I explore this theme? What else can I do to keep it interesting for myself and also my audience? So I started to think about what other imagery I could work with. In my grandma's house, there's a lot of Asian art. In a lot of my family's houses, my aunts and uncles, my cousins, my friends of my parents, they had a lot of brush painting in their homes. They hung it on the walls, and I remember looking at them and finding those compositions quite beautiful. So I started to research Chinese brush painting and what was the thinking behind it. What was the reasons that they chose these certain symbols? And I found that what they were doing was they were meditating on the role of nature. They would observe nature while painting it, and essentially communing with nature and thinking about what was our role with nature. And so I brought that aesthetic into my work because, in a way, that's what I was doing too. I was thinking about what is our role with nature? What's our relationship? So I brought that aesthetic, the sensibilities of Chinese brush painting to inspire me. And in a way, I see these as contemporary brush painting. So with these works, I would print out individual sections, and you can see they have different dot sizes. in
Mm-hmm.
one section to the next. So I would print them individually and then uh, piece them back together.
Mm-hmm.
And what I liked about this body of work was that it was a synthesis of all these different modes of seeing and representing the world, the outside world. It incorporated photography, painting, printing through the dots, and pixels through the
Mm-hmm.
squares. And there's all these ways, and it was a synthesis of all these different ways, all these modes of representation, all rolled into one. And it was going back and forth between digital and analog. And again, so I started to think about evolution and what would I do next, and how could I change this body of work and explore, because I think all artists at some point get a little restless and they want to
Yeah.
keep exploring, keep evolving. So I taught myself how to gold leaf. And the thing with gold leaf is that it's used a lot, or gold is used a lot in um, Asian art, as well as a lot of art. It's a way of symbolizing wealth or value, and making it uh, valuable to people. But the thing that I was interested in was the symbolism of gold and how it could be used as a sign of wealth. So I started to incorporate that into my next body of work, which was All That Glitters.
Yes.
The difference here, though, is that I'm using imitation gold leaf. It's not real gold leaf, because the materials are sort of a symbol of this illusion of gold. It's an illusion of wealth, and it's a false perception of abundance. And in relationship to the environment, it sort of is the misconception that nature is abundant and there's this endless supply. And as you're looking through the works, the eye navigates back and forth between the stock graphs, and nature, and back again. And I'm interested in that oscillating attention, where we look at one and we look at the other, and then back and forth and back and forth. And for me, that represents the conflicting values that I have of valuing nature and valuing my pocketbook. And which do I want to pay more attention to? Which do I value more? Because it seems as though to preserve nature, it would cost me in time or money, you know, driving a car, ordering from Amazon, flying a plane, and all these options where the alternative would just be really difficult for me. So I think about the choices that we make when we prioritize one or over the other. And so I'm interested in questioning what we value, what we prioritize, and essentially what we're willing to sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go ahead and take you through some installation shots of the show that is up at the Commonwealth Club right now.
Wonderful.
These are the works that are there.
Beautiful. Amazing. Thank you, Philip. That was just amazing. Thank you for taking that our artistic journey leading up to all that glitters.
Happy
I have
to
a
do
couple,
it.
yeah, great. I have a couple questions though. How long does it take to make one painting with your bodies of works for all that glitter? Like, how long is the process?
Well, it goes through multiple stages, and sometimes it can be a few days, sometimes it can be a
Oh,
few weeks. It takes uh, a lot of the time. There's a lot of different stages that require a lot of uh, design, and then it has to go through the printing process, and then it goes through the leafing process. So because it's done in multiple stages, it always varies for each piece. Sometimes the compositions just come really quickly. Sometimes I struggle with them a little bit. Sometimes I think, well, I don't want them to look exactly like this other piece that I've already done.
right,
So, it's sort of a little bit of uh, it's a journey with each one.
right, right. And does the production take place at your studio? You don't source anything out to get done. You do it all yourself in your studio.
Well, I do the printing process has done through a separate printer,
Uh huh.
just because it requires a large flatbed printer. It's printed with a UV cured acrylic ink, and it's printed on acrylic. So that I have to do outside because I don't have that equipment. So I have a
Yes.
master printer that prints that for me, and
Right.
they're editioned works. So, and once those get printed, then they come back to my studio where I will leaf the works, and then I will frame it, and then they're done.
Great, great. Yeah, I have a question about Chinese brush painting versus traditional painting. Is it the technique of the brush, how you use apply the brush on the canvas, or yeah, what is the difference?
I mean, Chinese brush painting is using specifically ink,
Okay.
um, and it's their own method that they developed, and it's usually done in the moment.
Mhm.
And it's similar to alla prima if we were to make
Okay.
a comparison to a Western painting, for example,
Okay.
where it's the painting is all done in one sitting.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. And I noticed with your works, especially with your works, all that glitter, it has like that watercolor look too. Like it's like watercolor, translucent.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I really, as you've seen in the poured paintings, I'm really interested in the happy accidents that
Right.
happen with water, with fluid paint,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I want to bring those into my work because without it, it might be for me, it might feel a little bit too cold, a little bit too calculated, and so by adding back that painterly quality, it not only introduces my hand into the work, but it also makes it a little bit more organic and free for me. It keeps it a little bit more interesting because you never know what happens with those when you're just using uh, ink and water and the
Right.
fluid quality of those.
Mhm. Yeah, and with your works, or especially your body works, all that glitters. Far as lighting and stuff, because I know your works are very shimmery. They kind of, have this, glitter about them. And so when you're actually exhibiting your works in galleries and stuff like that, the lighting is really important because the glare and all that. So I'm sure you had
Oh
problems
yeah,
with
definitely.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. In fact, photographing them is quite a nightmare, just because
Mhm.
they're shiny, they're reflective.
Right.
Sometimes they're on
Right.
a dark background, and so it can be quite challenging to document them. So I usually find just lighting is so important because in the right lighting, the works can be luminous, or if it's in poor lighting, they just look really dim because
Damn. They look
they're not reflecting the light, and they look really dark.
right. Right. Exactly. Then. Yeah. So let's just stop and take some questions from our viewers. If we have any questions, let me check and see if we have any questions on hand here. Hold on. Oh yes, we have some questions from Ann Smith, one of the co-chairs of Art Farm. Hi Ann, how are you? Ann's question: was medium for Chinese brushwork watercolor?
Well, it was ink. So they made
Who's it?
their own type of ink and pigment with. I mean, I guess you could call it watercolor, but
Yeah,
it was pan colors that they would dip in. It's very similar to watercolor,
yeah.
and also ink as well.
Okay. And she has a second question as well. Is the art that you have on display at the club for sale? Do you have your art on display elsewhere in the city?
Yes, they are
Yes,
for
it is.
sale. Yes, you can
Yes.
contact Robert. You can contact me. They are definitely for sale, and you can buy them.
Yes, you can
um,
buy your
I
own one.
yes, yes. Um, I'm going to be in a show in addition to the Commonwealth Club. I will be in a group show at 111 Minna Gallery this Friday. It's called The
Virtual. It's a
Return. I'll only have one. Yeah, I'll only have one piece there, and
nice.
it's not exactly the same body of work, but for a larger representation of this body of work, you should go to the Commonwealth Club or my website,
Website.
philiphua.com.
Yeah, yeah, right. Could you say that again? Your website?
Yes, it's philiphua.com.
Great. Let's see if I have more questions here. Let's see. That's so far no more questions. Hold on just a second. I think I have someone coming here. I think that's it for questions. Well, we'll wait and see. But I have another question for you, actually. What's your next body
Sure.
of work working on? Any new work
So I'm
series?
always sort of I'm always sort of playing around and experimenting with different things, but
Mhm.
right now I'm focused on a public art commission that I'm doing for the San Francisco Arts Commission and the
Oh, wow.
Southeast Community Center in the
Yes.
Bayview. So I was commissioned to do a public artwork there, and that work is similar in materials in that I'm using gold leaf, 22 karat gold leaf this time,
Oh, wow.
and the imagery is of six African American community activists who were responsible for the community center opening. So it's a mural that honors them, and I wanted to use gold leaf just to lionize them. I wanted to make
Right.
them heroic and
Yes.
important.
Important.
And especially these days, I think it's really important to not only value community activism and the need to be involved in your community, but also just recognizing the hard work that people who don't normally get recognized are doing.
Doing
So
in
I'm
the
working
community.
on that.
Mm-hmm.
It's going in the Southeast Community Center in the Bayview. I'm
Okay.
also working on a public art commission for BART that is in the works, and it's supposed to be installed sometime next year in the 19th Street Oakland BART station.
Oh, yeah, I know.
So
Yeah.
two public art commissions that are in the pipeline, as well as some private commissions that I'm working on. But as far as next bodies of work, I'm
Mm-hmm.
always sort of playing around right now. So I'm working on taking the works a little bit more three-dimensional. If you go to my website, you'll see some that are cut up paper that have been collaged with different depths, and there's a three-dimensional quality to the squares. And then I'm also interested in working with some changing paper, construction paper, which is, I call them performative prints.
Huh.
And they've been something that I've been exploring on the side for a little bit, where as the paper changes, I'm a fan of paper changing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
with
Yes.
construction paper, it will start to fade. And so what I do is I print images, screen print images on the construction paper that are similar in color. And as the paper
Mm-hmm.
fades, that imagery emerges. So I'm working on exploring that more sometimes in the future. But keeping up with just all the work that I have right now is enough for me.
I think you're going to be busy till 2021.
Yeah, definitely,
You
definitely.
know, you got your plate full there. Yeah. I have a few more questions for you, Philip.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, if you don't mind, actually. Do you see art as a powerful force for social change and how we see, understand our world?
I hope so. I mean, at least that's what see for myself. I think all artists have something to say. They want to express something about themselves, about their observations of the world, and I think it certainly can be. You know, I mean, if you even look at the opposite of how art can be damaging, you see these statues of Confederate leaders and the reaction to that and what they represent. So, conversely, art can be a certainly be a force for good and for communicating the ideals of the human race and social um, uh, concerns. So I hope so. I hope that art can be that force for good and change.
Yeah, because I see artists as social agents for change in our societies. Besides giving form to the intangible or document historical events, artists makes us think about and force us to think about a reality and also reveal what's hidden in the world. You know,
Yeah.
and yeah. The other question is, COVID. How's it impacted you as far as an artist?
So for me, it hasn't changed too much for me. You know, I spent a lot of time in the studio before COVID. I'm spending a lot of
Oh,
time now in the studio during COVID, and
right.
I'll probably spend a lot of time in the studio after COVID. And I suspect that there's a lot of artists that are doing the same. But for me, I feel very fortunate that nobody that I know or is I'm sorry, I should clarify. No one that is really close to me has gotten COVID. I certainly know people who have gotten COVID. They have family and friends who've died from COVID.
Mm,
But for me, fortunately, it hasn't impacted me too much. I'm spending a
mhm.
lot of time home, and there's it's almost nice to just be able to slow down a little bit and sort of. But I do miss people. I miss my community. I
Imagine.
miss friends. I miss hugs. I miss
Right.
dancing
Right.
with strangers. So there in some ways it's good. In some ways, I'm hoping for a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, it gives us a chance to reset, kind of. You know, get ready for what's next, basically.
Yeah, I mean, again, I feel very fortunate. I know there are artists out there that are full time. They're relying on the paychecks or the sales of art,
Right.
and who
Just
knows?
exposure.
Yeah, they have studio rent, they have a mortgage, they have rent, they have families to feed. So it can be really challenging if your market suddenly dries up. You know,
Right.
on the
Right.
flip side, I feel like as there are more people who are able to work from home and they're spending a lot of time at home, maybe they feel like they want their home to be nicer. Maybe they
Mhm.
want beautiful things around them during this dark time, and maybe they want to support the arts by having more art in their home.
Right.
And fortunately, I'm lucky by having a few commissions to help with that.
Mhm.
So it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed
It
bag.
is truly is. It truly is a mixed bag. A lot of the storefronts that you see in the communities are actually gives artists a chance to get their works out there. Is the storefronts are their canvas, basically getting their works out there, getting exposure that way. You know, which I think is great.
Yeah, I remember in 2009 there was this program through the San Francisco Arts Commission where they
Hmm.
commissioned artists to put installations in these empty storefronts along mid-market. And
I
I'm
remember
thankful
that.
to be one of those artists where we put art into those storefronts. We vitalized those empty storefronts, and then they ended up getting a
Hmm.
lot of new renters in there. So I hope that there is some sort of return to that thinking of how art can be a way to stimulate the economy,
Yes.
to bring back small businesses to these blighted storefronts, and then also just to beautify and bring hope and beauty to people who are living with the blight around them.
Hmm. Exactly. Right. I agree. Yes. Any last words, Philip? Any last comments you want to say or anything about your art?
Vote.
Oh, well, yes.
Vote.
Yes.
And,
That is important.
and we're all in this together, I mean,
Yes, we are.
one of the things that we can all do is just wear a mask. I find
Yes.
the pushback against masks mind-boggling, that a way to be patriotic and to a little sacrifice to help the community and the greater good can be so simple as wearing a
Very
mask.
just
I mean, it's
work.
not, I mean, it doesn't really hurt you to put on a mask, and it does so much for your community and the people around you. And I just don't understand why we all can't just come together as a country and do the patriotic thing for our country and simply cover our faces with a piece of cloth. I
Oh,
don't understand it. So
I'm with you
yeah.
there. I'm with you there for sure. All right, Philip, I want to thank you for sharing your works with us and talking about your works, and especially taking us through that artistic journey that leads up to all that glitters. Because I remember
Thank
actually
you
when I
so
first saw you,
much.
yeah, I remember when I first saw your works. I think it was in the spring, actually, at Open Studios at 1895 Bryant Street. That's when I first actually saw you.
1890, yes.
1890, yeah, Bryant Street. I was just so struck by your works, though. Yeah, but thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That whole community has so many talented artists in
Oh
that
yeah,
building. And shout out to Artspan for putting the whole program
exactly.
of art open studios on. There's just really empowering artists to
They
take initiative and take control of their careers.
exactly though. Yes. Also, want to thank our viewing audience today, and thank you very much. I hope you got something out of this, a deeper understanding, appreciation for Philip Hu's works. Once again, my name is Robert Melton, and to learn more about our program, live stream programs, visit us at www.commonwealthclub.org. Till next time, be well. All right. Thank you.